You're listening to PatchBay on tymkrs.
Welcome to PatchBay, a conversational podcast all about audio equipment, music, audio engineering, recording, live sound, and what Whisker did.
What did Whisker do? All right, so to preface this, I will just say that at one point in time, deleted a whole album, which wasn't good. But I did have a backup, and I only actually lost the lead guitar tracks that I had spent 3.5 days on. So it wasn't that bad. I didn't lose the whole 2 months worth of recording. But what it had come down to was I had the drive I was working on, the backup drive, and instead of transferring the new folder to the backup drive, I transferred the backup folder to the main drive.
Yeah.
It was because my boss walked in and was talking to me, and I was mousing around at the same time. So I've learned now to get my damn hands off a mouse when somebody comes in and asks me a question, especially when it's close to the recycle bin.
Yeah. we were recording this episode a little bit ago, and we just finished, and I was trying to change over the file number of the template to the next podcast so we could record again. And to do that, I delete the tracks that we record, and then click Save As out of the file menu and save it with the new file number. But instead of clicking Save As, I clicked Save, so it just hosed the half-hour recording we just did. Yeah, you can't undo after you save, so oh well.
This is the deal. That's all good. It's all good. So I think I'd like to start off this conversation, which is going to be awesome for everybody who's listening. But we really need to discuss the whole running a PA off an alternator.
Oh, yeah?
I think that's probably the best way to start this conversation.
So,
not that we're going to go backwards, but I feel like that might be a good way to start this.
We were covering a whole bunch of stuff. You guys know us. We sort of go all over the map. But one of the things that came up was that in live sound, sometimes you come up with some interesting power solutions to solve things. And Shane was talking about a guitarist who was selling his amp, and he wanted to trade it for a truck because, it's so freaking overpriced that you could trade it for a truck. So I told a little story about how my grandfather's big band used to park their Model T outside the stage door and use that to run their PA back in the late 20s, early 30s for power. And how my dad used to play shows where they would get a bunch of pontoon boats out in the middle of the lake, and they'd power the PAs off the batteries in the pontoon boats, and how I've done live sound off a generator in a parade for live performance stuff. And
truck.
Yeah, but the thing that came out of this is that Shane's demanding now that we have to get a photograph of a Model T running a PA system and use it as an album cover. I think it's a great idea. It would be a great
album cover. Yeah, I think that'd be a perfect album cover with like a pitchfork in a field, and then like some super sexy like array speaker system, not like an old ass PA, but like a like a big brand new PA. I think that would be a good. Well, actually, even an old PA, I think that would just be badass. You put it in the back of the truck or something, it'd be genius. We just need to find somebody with a Model T, and we need to make a record as well. But we'll cross that bridge at some point in time.
So, Electric Kodama Band is looking for a new member. The only requisite is that you have to own a Model T.
Exactly. No musical ability required. Just as long.
Just a really old pickup truck.
Yeah, a really old, and we'll give you a set of spoons. It's all good. Although the spoon players would probably get pissed off about that. But right. So I think we might leave that other discussion, or at least I don't really want to get into
we'll get back into the other stuff later. I'm sure it'll be good to cover it in full.
Yeah, I think so. So the one thing that we were talking about, and this one guy had talked to me about a closed speaker cabinet, and which led into sort of a discussion about guitar amps, which I'd like to have again because I thought that was a good discussion, and it wasn't really an audio nerd thing, but more of a guitar nerd thing. But basically, this guy sort of emailed me and said, "Have you ever had any, used a closed like an enclosed speaker cabinet, not a closed back cab, but like an actual. It's basically a box with a speaker in it. And I guess the whole point is to not be ridiculously loud live and be able to sort of crank up your amp, like just basically tube amp into speaker, and then there's a 57 inside the box kind of thing. Sort of for the purists, in the world. Um,
And that
and
makes sense because the good sound that associate, especially with classic guitar sounds, electric
mhm,
guitar, is basically you got a small speaker cabinet with a 57 in front of it,
loud
and
amp,
putting
yeah.
that in a box with it just turned up all the way in there, yeah, makes sense.
Obviously, though, then you run into sort of the how do you hear yourself situation. From what I gather, ZZ Top has done this before, and they'll like put this. It's in a rolling rack case, and it's under the stage kind of thing, and there's just basically a hole on the side for the cables. And then he has his dummy Marshall stacks and stuff on stage. But yeah, I mean, if you've got a good PA sound guy that's going to give you a reinforcement sound back that you're able to hear or have in your monitors or something, I could see it being a great idea. But um, I I still go by the premise of just bring an amp. If it needs to be mic'd, get the guy to mic it. If not, just turn it up a little bit so you can hear yourself and go for it. Balance, like we were sort of discussing. Balance yourself as a band first. Before you even worry about trying to add a PA into the situation. But anyway, we kind of came down to the point that there's really two guitar players in the world, right?
Well, there's probably more than two when you start getting into the acoustic stuff. But in terms of electric guitar players, you've got two major camps. One of them are the guys that like the simple guitar, simple tube amp, turn it all the way up, you're good. And then you've got the guys who like to have 6,000 pedals all chained up in a row, and they tinker with it nonstop during practice to annoy everyone.
Yes, exactly. And being more of the guitar chord guy, amp, I still do tinkering or noodling per se. It's just a guitar player thing, but the actual effect tinkering drives me batty. Um, my personal feel is really the amp, the guitar, and I do just in the sort of the situation that I play in. I have an overdrive pedal, and my amp has a bunch of different sounds in it. But for me, it would really come down to guitar, like basically an overdrive pedal, a distortion pedal, and then if I had a tuner on the ground, and that would be good for me. So yeah, I like to sort of be a sort of straightforward guitar player. However, I just saw the Roland Ready Strat and played it, and oh my god, I might become a synthesizer player.
Yeah?
I really want one just for giggles. I think it would be awesome to have. And I've looked at the GK2A pickups and like the sort of the older ones you can pick up and stuff. And in the grand scheme of things, you can go and get the pickup and buy the module and all that kind of stuff, or you can just go get the Roland Ready guitar that's pre-set up and pre-wired properly, and it's a American-made Fender Stratocaster. So it just seems to be to me, a smarter way of going about it. So that's on my list of possibilities. I think would be kind of a fun thing to have.
Okay, so for those of them out there who don't know what you're talking about.
It's what it is a MIDI converter pickup for guitars. It was made by Roland, and there's a second box you can buy that has a whole bunch of basically like general MIDI synthesizer type of things. And it's you can play bass, you can play drums on your guitar, you can play piano on your guitar. The thing about it, obviously, you being
Whisker,
a
Sid Cog synthesizer.
yeah, being a synthesizer kind of guy, you have to, when you play a sax line, you got to remember to breathe when you're playing. You can't just go like diddle diddle like you would on a guitar, right? So that's about the only thing you always have to obviously remember. But I think it would be a fun thing to have, besides all the other guitar type possibilities you can get out of the darn thing. But yeah, anyway, that's what I was thinking.
It's on. It seems to me like the kinds of folks who are into doing the whole 12, 13 pedals, all put together in a big chain. It would kind of make sense if they would just switch over to synthesizers and use a guitar controller instead.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think it makes the most sense. Like, yeah, there's obviously guitar specific controllers, but I mean, you can get, I was gonna say, you can get like just a regular synthesizer module and still run it with a pickup. It's MIDI generally you can use with anything. Me personally, I'm a hack of a piano player, but obviously I know how to play guitar, so it only makes sense, if I wanted to sort of stretch the boundaries of what I can do already, it would be a fun thing to have. I mean, you could overuse it for sure, but it depends on the band, obviously. Guitar, the band Garbage, they're really big fans of using those actually. So if you haven't listened to them, I would strongly suggest checking out Garbage. Yeah. Anyway, that's
Yeah,
about it for.
they were pretty popular back in the day. Didn't know that they were still together.
They are, yeah, and it's only in the last few years that Roland and Fender have started making the Roland Ready Strats, and it's just a nice marriage of the guitar and that kind of pickup. So, being a complete Fender nerd, I guess I'm biased, but
That
anyway,
explains why I don't like you very much.
yeah, exactly. My Telecaster's close to your 56 U2. It's got one extra pickup. Well, actually, mine's got two, but it's the same kind of idea. It's a basic guitar.
Yeah, Telecasters are okay.
Yeah. Anyway, so I don't know. Did you want to dive into the whole musical theater conversation we were having before, or?
I don't know. I think we'll save it until we can do it and be fresh and not just be talking about what we just talked about.
Yeah.
But look forward to that because evidently Shane and I have both done some live theater stuff, and we'll be covering that in a future episode.
And it definitely gets entertaining, and there's possibilities of us having nervous breakdowns throughout the course of most of those. Well, live sound in general, you tend to
Yeah.
want to have a
Live sound is tricky sometimes. Like today, I obviously botched the first recording by erasing it with a single click, and then we've got network issues, and Shane keeps dropping out, which you guys are probably hearing a little bit of that, but it's not nearly as bad. We had to stop and restart and whatever. And then the doorbell rang downstairs, and some of you guys might know we've got this epic, I think it's a 1940s model, big Westminster chimes doorbell in our house.
nice.
And just, rocks the house with dong dong. And then the neighbors showed up and decided to start using his snowblower on the driveway in the middle of the night. So,
Right.
hey, thanks, buddy. We're not recording a podcast here.
No, that's hilarious. I've never understood people who have those giant grandfather clocks that cuckoo every hour on the hour. Like,
I actually
wouldn't
know
mind.
two people who have like one of them's not so bad, but that have like multiple clocks in their collection,
Oh
and one
God.
of the guys has literally hundreds in his house, and
Oh
they're
my God.
all functional and they all are loud, right? They
Yeah.
set their clocks to go off not every hour, but they offset them so that you know what time it is, not by what the clocks say, but by which one is making a racket on this
Right.
5-minute interval.
Oh my God.
I'd
That
go
would drive me
crazy.
nuts.
I would go nuts. I would smash them all.
Yeah, it's sometimes it's very for me. I always, especially when I've had one of those days where I've been doing music and audio all day. There's a real comfort in coming home and there's like no noise whatsoever other than like the heater, like turning the TV off. All the animals have kind of relaxed for the evening, and it's just like, wow, this is ridiculously quiet.
You're
Yeah, I don't
talking
know.
about heaters. I've noticed an interesting effect. People from the north don't hear them, right?
No.
We were live streaming. We did a 48-hour live stream show a couple weekends ago for the deconstruction, big sort of contest where hackers get together and try to cobble together some inventions over the course of the weekend. and we were running this live stream the whole time. And one of the people that is from a more southern area, every time the heater would turn on in the house, he'd be like, "Oh, what is that horrible noise? It's horrible. It's bassy, and it's the heater, man. It's the furnace. Chill out."
He probably is fine with the air conditioner unit running,
He
24/7.
wouldn't hear that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's true. And that's it's a consideration in actually in my studio too. I have a heater that blows air into the studio, which isn't good when you're recording. So a lot of the times, what I'll do is diligently crank the heat before the session and really sauna up the studio, and then basically turn it off. And then whenever there's sort of the 15-minute sort of break that happens inevitably every hour on the hour with some musicians,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll go and crank it back up again. I mean, it depends. Some people prefer to sort of record a little colder, but yeah,
I
you
do.
can't have that
I
noise. You
definitely
can't.
do.
Yeah,
My
same
body
with.
temperature goes up probably 5 degrees whenever I'm playing guitar or piano for
Yeah,
that matter. It just, I think it's because all the neurons are firing or something.
yeah. I'm one of those nervous people too. Like when I record something, I'll usually be over the top as far as playing, or when I do a commercial, I'm like, hi, that guy. Um, like just kind of do jumping jacks in the studio and be, because I've been on the other side of the glass, and it's the most boringest thing in the world when somebody walks up to do a commercial and they're like, please come down and visit our. So I always try to be. I've always sort of want them to be the over enthusiastic guy, so I just do that. But I do tend to sort of grind my teeth and stuff too. So yeah, I'm the same. I always get way warm. So yeah, I think it depends on the people, but usually I'll try to warm it up, especially when it's really freaking cold outside too. It's the studio only keeps so much heat, but yeah, no, that's hilarious. Yeah, for me, I mean, I don't even notice it anymore at home. It's just it's one of those noises that you get used to when you live in the Great White North.
Yeah.
So
So
I can turn it on like that,
on
by the way.
on good studios, like proper, $1 million studios or whatever, they've
Mhm,
got those cool baffling systems and flexi bits between the furnace unit and the building
mhm.
that make it so that none of the low frequency vibrations come in through the building and none of the air blowing noises can make it in through the vents. If I were to ever build a studio from scratch, that would be high on my list of things to do because living this far north, trying to record in this time of year, oh
Yeah,
man.
it's too cold. I mean, having a space heater though is really genius for just having one. It's sort of like up north studio 101, just to crank up just to warm the room up a little bit. I mean, like I said, it depends on the musician, but if you're too cold, that's not good either, right? So yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, but those we're talking extremely expensive studios.
Yeah.
Actually, for me, I don't have as much of a problem with the furnace that runs into my studio. It's actually the furnace that's for the warehouse that's behind my studio that I do get a low end rumble from once in a while. So a lot of the times especially if I'm recording in the evening, it just ends up being off, right? But yeah, that's definitely a consideration. And there's all those types of things when you're recording at home that you can't handle: buses going by, trucks going by, neighbor blowing out your driveway. There's these types of things that just sort of pop up, and either you kind of go with it, or you wait for a better time. I
Yeah.
think that's part. Yeah, I was gonna say I think that's partially why there's so much sort of recording guitar gear and stuff that's like pods and stuff were invented because who's going to crank up a Marshall at 3 o'clock in the morning to record a guitar solo? You won't have neighbors eventually.
Yeah. Have you seen Aphex Twins solution to this problem?
No, I haven't.
So he bought a bank. I think it's in Islington or somewhere around there, north of London.
Okay.
And he just bought a bank and he set up his mixing room in the vault.
Nice. That's like an anechoic chamber.
Yeah, so I just closes the vault door, and he can be as loud as he wants.
Yeah, no kidding. Nobody would ever know. That's hilarious.
Of course, this guy also owns a World War One tank, so
Mm.
kind of a little eccentric, but whatever.
Speaking of weird places to record, I've got two more that just came to mind. If you ever get a chance, I don't know if Moby still lives there, but Moby had this really cool apartment loft in New York City, and he had all of his analog synthesizers and gear and stuff in like basically a bedroom with these drawers that were in the wall that would roll out with for each synthesizer, which was kind of handy. There was an interview, I think it was in EM magazine, Electronic Musician magazine. It was kind of neat. I'm sure there's pictures on the internet of it, but and then the other place, which I'm sure would be weird, but from what I gathered, Dark Side of the Moon was recorded on a boat that was beached on the River Thames in London.
Hmm.
Now, obviously, the boat is on land, but there's still a bit of sort of sea rocking situation happening.
Hmm.
So I'm sure A, for miking that'd have been fun, and B, just overall being on a boat for that long probably take its toll. I'm sure it was fun though, and it was. I'm sure they could have been as loud as they wanted to, really, because they were fairly far away from civilization. But I don't know if that boat is still a recording studio or not. But yeah, it's kind of a neat idea.
Yeah, we didn't record it, but I've done more than once. I've done live shows on flatbed trucks that were moving. Once was for a parade. I was doing sound for, it was actually a puppeteering troupe, and they
Oh, cool.
needed PA for their music that their puppets were singing to, whatever, kind of like Sesame Street or whatever.
Hmm.
And another time was for a rapper who was doing some community stuff in the bad part of town, and they wanted to get the community involved, so they decided to throw a rap concert from the back of a flatbed truck, uh,
Flatbed truck tour.
driving around the ghetto, and it just sort of turned into this big parade. It was pretty cool.
Um, I've actually heard about that before. One guy was trying to sell me on that idea, and he was like, "This is like the newest thing. Nobody's ever heard of this before." And I was pretty sure that people had done the flatbed truck tour before,
Yeah,
and it was
it
like the
goes
hip hop
back
guy.
to,
The thing, yeah.
the in this country anyway, you go back to the bandwagon thing advertising, where you've literally got a band playing in the back of the wagon, and they drive through, the rural areas and put on shows for the locals, trying to get them to vote for Commissioner blah blah blah, who's all about family values. It goes back to the Dust Bowl in the 30s and 20s and all that.
Yeah. Um, they actually been doing this in Canada, the holiday train, and they do the exact same idea, exactly like what you're talking about. It's sort of bigger Canadian name acts, but they'll hit sort of major centers and then sort of rinky-dink towns along, and they go from the west coast to the east coast or vice versa. It's kind of and I actually read an article about it too. It's in Canadian Musician or Professional Sound or something, which is a Canadian audio magazine. Just talking about like sort of the rig and how to keep the performers warm because a lot of times they're playing. It's in the middle of winter, right? Like, so it's kind of a neat idea.
So one that I saw recently was over in Bristol, England.
Mhm.
The lead guitarist. Well, I don't know if he's really. I guess he'd be the rhythm guitarist because he plays the gypsy jazz rhythm parts for Electric Swing Circus out of Bristol. His day job is that he owns a bunch of semis that convert into stages.
Hmm.
So
That's
the
cool.
side of the truck folds down, and it's already set up, and they've got a smaller truck, and they just tie the two together with an umbilical. So you've got the performance area on the big truck, and you've got the mixing board and all that set up in the smaller truck, and the side of that one opens up, and they just park them so that the sound guy can see the stage when they're both open.
That's awesome. Even those like mobile trucks, I always found it's just amazing what those guys will do. And I mean, a lot of those, like the mobile recording trucks, those guys just get video feeds of what's going on stage a lot of the times, just so that they know what's going on, because these guys are just lot, and some of those things are crazy. Those guys got like Neve Capricorns, in the back of a truck. Like, how in the heck? But like super slick, like big TV screens, the whole nine yards. It's crazy, but that's neat. I'll have to look that guy up. And I
Yeah,
guess
and I'm
like
sure when
Punch
you do
Master,
show notes, you'll have to look up the Electric Swing Orchestra. They're pretty
there's a
cool.
yeah,
Or
there's a
not
few
Electric Swing Orchestra, Electric Swing Circus. That's right.
Electric Swing Circus.
Hmm.
And the only other thing that had come to my mind, this is an interesting diversion of a topic, but the only other thing that had come to my mind, I remember reading, this is when I was a kid, but this guy, his whole marketing shtick was that he recorded this whole album in like an old Rambler or something, and he recorded the whole record inside his car. Like he had a 4-track and a mixer in the front seat, and was doing vocals in the back seat and guitar parts. And I don't know if he did drums on the record or what, but that's kind of an interesting premise. I think it was a country record, so I'm not really sure, but so like the whole tone is the inside of a car, which yeah, I don't know. I don't know if I'd be a huge fan of that idea, but yeah, I have to listen to the record, see if I can find it anyway, because it was kind of an interesting idea. It's funny what people will try and pull off, right?
Yeah, and I mean, if you got the musicianship there, you can do that. I don't necessarily think I would confine it to the inside of the car, but set up one mic outside in a park, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I've read stuff about that too, where guys will be walking around with the Zoom H4n or another sort of custom,
Totally.
but a decent portable recorder, and they'll have like the stereo mix of the bed tracks that they've recorded at the studio, and then they'll do a guitar part in a stairwell, and do vocal tracks in old fort or church, or uh whatever sort of sparks the creativity. And mixing it, I'm sure, is God, but but that's besides the point.
I saw a pretty cool one yesterday actually. I was surfing around and there's this oh shoot, I can't remember the band name. If it comes to me, I'll make sure I'll tweet it at you or something. But it's this 4-piece bluegrass band out of Portland, and they were doing some outdoor recordings, and they basically just had a nice condenser mic, just one, and pretty omnidirectional. They're the sort of band that likes to play around one mic, and they were just recording with one of those Zooms, and they'd bring it to different outdoor locations and just sort of play. And on some of their tracks, you'll hear like the ocean waves coming into the background, or babbling brook, or a bunch of birds, or whatever. It's just part of the recording.
Yeah, and that is nice. I'll take that any day over a truck driving driving, or an airplane flying over. um yeah, yeah, I was gonna say, that reminded me of the Trailer Park Boys. I'm sure you may have seen their movie, but they're a
Yeah,
Canadian
yeah.
thing. Um, and
I'm
those
familiar
guys,
with your culture, sir.
all right, those guys were
Fucking
uh,
garbage piece.
so DIY though, and once in a while they'd have a helicopter fly, because where they would record the show was very close to an army base somewhere in Newfoundland or whatever.
Yeah, I
And
actually found their set on satellite imagery. It is really close to a base.
yeah, and so every once in a while, like a helicopter would fly over in the shot, and they were so DIY and like saving tape and stuff. They just like ad lib it into the conversation. They'd be just like, you effing choppers. Like they would just yell at them, like, and this is like part of the show, and
Yeah.
it's like a scripted show. And then another thing too, like he would do, they'd shoot one scene where Bubbles would show up in a car, and he'd say a line, and then he'd reverse the car, take off his shirt, and he'd have a different shirt on, and then it was a line for another show, and you just pull up in the car and like do like they're just, those guys are such di, like they, and yeah, if you should really read up, or our listeners should, if they're interested in them, because some of the stuff those guys did was just crazy. You know, they get like free trailers off of people as long as they could drag them there just to sort of build this fake trailer park. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting. But
Yeah, it's
anyway,
a really, really cool from the hip production style that those guys have, especially on the earlier seasons.
yeah, and it's a super success story too. You know, like in the grand scheme of things. I mean, and those guys don't actually. I've met them. And so is my wife, and they're always in character. Those guys, it's ridiculous. They're walking around with Julian always has rum and coke, like he actually literally has rum with him, like during performances and stuff like that when they did a book signing a little while ago. And yeah, interesting guys, you know. But anyway, yeah. So how are we doing on time?
We're pretty much done. But
Are we? Okay.
it's not like
Yeah.
we inadvertently came up with a good central theme for this episode.
I think
Despite
so.
all of the technical feelings and snow blowing and whatnot, don't be afraid to, record things if you've got in troublesome situations. I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
You can treat it like you need to be working in a studio, or you can just get on with living and record with what you got.
Yeah, exactly. And go for it. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it sort of comes down to whatever the project is. I mean, Trailer Park Boys, perfect example. Like total DIY, and it's awesome. You know, and it's great the way it is. And a lot of these records and the train thing I was talking about, and the wagon thing you were talking about, that was part of that deal. You know, it was part of that shtick. Nobody expects it to be a glorious sound. They just expect a really good performance, and that's sort of what it kind of comes down to, right?
Yeah. So there's the positive message for this week.
There we go. All right, cool.
Thank you for tuning in, everyone. You can find this show every Friday at PatchBay.tv. There's an RSS feed there if you want to have it automatically downloaded. If you can't be bothered to check a website once a week, if you can, there's a play button right there on the page. You can listen to it that way. Yeah. Thank you guys for listening. That's it for us for this week. We'll see you guys next week.